Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending our Friday noon seminar. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Joannie Desroches. She's going to tell us about her background, but I want to emphasize the fact that she is a graduate of our medical physics master's program. She continued on and did a PhD and is now working in industry, but today she's going to cover all of that. So I won't waste any more of your time. Please go ahead, Joannie.
Thank you for the introduction and thank you for the invitation. Very glad to be here after more than 10 years after I finished my master's degree. So today I'll talk about my academic path, but also my career path that's not very conventional. So I hope it will be interesting for you guys. And don't hesitate to ask questions during the talk. We can make it interactive if you want, or you can ask questions at the end as well. So as I said, I'm going to talk about I call it non-linear because it's not a conventional career path, how I acquired skills that are pretty transferable to what I'm doing today, why I decided to join Cleio, what we do at Cleio. I'll give you some project examples and insights into product development strategy. I'll tell you a little bit more about my specific role at Cleio and why this matters to you. All right, so as I said, my career has not been the most conventional and linear. So it started off choosing engineering physics. It really came up from my passion for physics during CEGEP and the desire to do a more practical and impactful career. After my engineering physics degree, I went directly to work. I worked in production in a scientific instrumentation company. And after less than a year, I decided that I wanted to go further. So basically, I wanted to have the roles of the CTOs and the PhD in the company. So I decided to go back to school. And then that's where I went to study medical physics at McGill. That's what we have in common. So that also brought me to an extension of my master's project into a PhD, which I did in biomedical engineering at Polytechnique. So both during my master's and my PhD, I worked on an optical system to detect cancer tissue during neurosurgery, which is now being commercialized. So very interesting and very practical project where I could be in the operating room testing my product. So it was very stimulating. I also want to mention that I did a special program during my PhD that is called Technopreneur that was offered by HEC and Polytechnique, and during which we were kind of simulating starting a company. So we were simulating the commercialization of a company, of a technology from academia. So that's kind of where I learned how to build a business model, what do you need to consider when you want to start a company, etc. So that really increased the interest I have for startups and company in general. So after all of those years, like way too many years at university, I took my first steps in the startup world. And that's where I really learned a lot in very few years. So in startups, you kind of wear multiple hats. So you really learn a lot of things in not a lot of times. And after jumping from company to company, I ended up shaping development strategy and driving business development for a medical device development company, which is Cleio. I want to talk about how my academic background in particular brought me a lot of surprisingly transferable skills. So these, I'm just giving some examples here, but problem solving and analytical thinking. So when you do coursework, homework, and research in physics engineering, you really develop these skills, and this is really applicable to product development, but also sales. The basic understanding I have of scientific and engineering principle really helps me to not only understand the products that the team is working with, but also provide credibility when talking to clients as well. So really, I feel like I have a strong foundation to evaluate the medical devices that we will work with and understand the challenges associated with it as well. As you probably know, we have a lot of presentation, oral exam to do. So this really increased communication and presentation skills, which are really, really helpful in my career as well. I'm just going to give you an idea of the companies I work with. So first, right after my PhD, I worked at Zilia, which is a company developing an ophthalmology product. So basically, it's a retinal camera that measures the oxygen saturation in the eye fundus. And this is to diagnose ocular diseases like glaucoma, for example. I did multiple things in that startup, but mostly I led research collaborations, clinical studies. I did some support for sales and marketing because realistically in a startup, everyone is doing sales. And I also touched the regulatory affairs. So that's where I realized that this is a whole area on its own. So regulatory affairs is really, I don't want to say heavy, but it's a very big part of the effort when you're developing a medical device. I then worked at Imagia, which is a company that does not exist anymore, but was developing a software for cancer diagnostic based on imaging. And I was focused on customer success, product training, and application support for the platform. I then worked at Sonoscope, another startup, but creating cardiac ultrasonic probes for cardiac monitoring. I was also biomedical engineer and clinical application specialist for them. And I was involved in the development, but also the clinical application. So clinical study, all of the documentation needed to bring a device into an institution, etc. I then took my first step into sales at Uptech, which is a CCTT. My role was development and innovation manager in the medtech sector. So basically, Uptech is offering optical design services for every application possible, and I was responsible for all of the medtech application. Common thread in that is that my role was really always connecting the technology with the clinical needs and the end users. Working in different startups, as I said, wearing multiple hats, I really learned a lot in these few years. So some examples here, the power of user feedback. We always hear it, but you never really realize it before you see how impactful it is. So the first steps is always to understand your user, understand what he or she needs, and incorporate the user needs into clinical needs, which is really successful for medical devices. I also learned the complexity of the regulatory approvals, reimbursement, market adoption, and this is usually what drives the development strategy. So regulatory strategy is often done before thinking about product development strategy. If you wait too long, it will cost a lot if you change your regulatory strategy afterwards. I also learned the importance of cross-functional team. So it might seem cliche, but it's bringing a medical device to market is really a team effort. So there needs to be a collaboration between engineering, clinical, regulatory, and business teams as well. Because you don't have money if you don't raise money and if you don't have clients. Last one is unexpected timeline. So it's like if you work in construction, it always takes longer than you thought it would take. So that's what you hear, but you don't really realize it until you work in a startup company. So why I decided to join Cleio after that? So first, like in a startup world, we were always having consultant to advise us on what to do. But I joined Cleio because I feel like this is really an expert team. They know what they're doing in medical device development. And that's where I was able to have a strong team around me to make sure that we're doing things correctly. So Cleio is a medical device and development company, and I'm going to give you more details in the next few slides. We actually work pretty often with medical imaging device, diagnostic device, data analysis, and for device performances. So you'll see a couple of examples, but that's why it's relevant to medical physics. So we are a medical device development firm in Trois-Rivières and Montreal and Laval. We have 3 offices. We've been around for more than 20 years now, and we've been involved in more than 2,500 projects. We are ISO 13485 certified. That's why we engage with medical device companies, because we can support the development with all the regulatory requirements. So we are an all-in-one medical device software and development company. So we have an integrated team. Our services are human factors engineering, medical device design and engineering. We do also software, so we do connected devices and cloud platforms. We also do software as a medical device, or SAMD, and we have a strong quality assurance and regulatory team as well. So our strength at Cleio really lies in our integrated expertise. So we begin with innovation strategy and a deep understanding of human factors, user experience, which will directly inform the user interface and industrial design of a device. These designs are realized through our mechanical, electronic, firmware, software development capabilities. And crucially, all our work is guided by a commitment to rigorous QA and adherence to regulatory compliance. So this integrated and collaborative approach ensures successful medical device development. So how do we actually do what we do? So our approach and methodology are really key to our success, and we call it the IDEAL process. So IDEAL is more than just a catchy name. So it just represents our process for getting completely aligned with our clients to develop the best solution for their needs. So we use a standardized process that ensures that everyone on our multidisciplinary team moves through the project in sync. So basically, consistency is not only for us, but it also makes it much simpler for our client to track the progress, see exactly what they are in each phase, and where they are in the development journey. So first phase is the immerse phase, and that's where we really dive deep into the product, the technology. We understand the problem the client is trying to solve, the market landscape, the needs of the user. So it's all about building a solid foundation. Next phase is the define phase. So based on what we learned in the immersion, we clearly define the solution. So what exactly are we going to create? What are the key specifications and requirements? That really brings clarity and focus. And after this phase, we know exactly what product we're going to develop. Then we go into the elaborate phase, and that's really the building phase. So that's typically the longest phase in the development process. And that's where our design and engineering team gets to work, bringing the defined solution to life step by step. This is usually an iterative process. So we go through an alpha prototype, beta, sometimes gamma prototype, which will look more and more like the final commercial product. After that, we adapt. So this is very crucial stage, which involves testing and certification of the solution. So we want to ensure not only it works, but it also meets all the necessary standards and regulation. And finally, there's the launch phase, which is really the exciting part, bringing the solution to market and filing to the regulatory authorities like FDA and Health Canada. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of projects we worked on in the past. I was not there when they did these projects, so I'm going to try to describe it the best I can. So this is a project that showcases our collaboration with Soundbite Medical. They are specialists in treating calcified occlusive vascular disease. We partner with them on the commercial version of their device, which is a Class 2 device in the US and a Class 4 in Canada. The console that you see here is specifically designed for the endovascular treatment of calcified artery disease, a very challenging condition. So the technique used is a chronic total occlusion crossing, or CTO crossing, where basically a guide wire is inserted in the arteries to revascularize the artery. Our design prioritized the procedure environment, so the operating room, focusing on addressing space limitation and ensuring easy access for the medical team, which really increases adoption. So if you have a device in the operating room that's not easy to use and not friendly with the environment, the adoption is going to be very low, which you don't want. Key optimizations here included the console's height to prevent obstruction with other devices and accessory management for a streamlined workflow. The console features a distinct interface. So basically there's a screen on one side, one screen on the other side. And these are tailored for nurses that are at the back and physicians or surgeons that are at the front that need to see other data than the nurses need to see. Ergonomics were also very significant considerations with carefully designed angles, clearance, and inclined to maximize comfort and accessibility for the medical staff during the procedures, which are pretty lengthy. So like you see there's a handle on the console, which has three-sided. So that's really for easy maneuvering and adjusting the console within the operating room. This case study is an oncology platform with breakthrough cancer treatment technology. So this is a collaboration with Starpax Biopharma on their innovative device, which is called the Polar Track. It uses an advanced technology to deliver highly targeted cancer therapy, aiming to minimize damage to surrounding health tissue. So their approach combines advanced biological mechanism with magnetic guidance for direct delivery of treatment into tumor tissue. They initially had a proof of concept, which was a lot smaller, and we partnered with them to develop a full-size Polar Track that's suitable for clinical use in hospital settings. There was a lot of challenges, and this is to date our longest and biggest project. And one key challenge was to create a device that's not only effective, but also seamlessly integrates into the clinical environment. Our approach centered our deep understanding of user needs, both for healthcare professionals that are using the device, but also for patients. This was an ambitious cross-disciplinary project that involved pretty much all of our teams, so industrial design, UI, UX design, mechanical engineering, electronics, software, firmware, and quality assurance. There was a significant emphasis that was placed on human factors for this project to ensure that the device is intuitive to use, but also to minimize use errors and optimize workflow. I'm also going to talk about three other smaller projects. So we developed a realistic simulator for MRI-guided cardiac ablation training. Primary focus was to create an immersive learning experience for medical professionals, and key design aspects included intuitive user interface and realistic haptic feedback for the user. That was a crucial element to replicate all the complexities of the procedure. And we also worked on an anesthesia ventilator for veterinary clinics. We have also worked on an ophthalmology tool that uses a retinal camera and is driven by AI also to diagnose some ocular diseases. Before I switch, is there any questions about Cleio, what we do, the project that I presented?
I'll ask a question. You might get to it, but are all of your projects client, like you have someone from the outside who contacts you and says, we want this to be done? Or are there things that you have internal, like you have an R&D team of your own that's developing projects?
We don't have internal projects. We do exclusively client work.
Okay, so people are always coming to you with a problem and then you help them.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right, thanks.
I think we've had some internal projects before, but we realized that we are always super busy with client projects, and these internal projects don't advance very fast. So when you wait 1 year to start back working on your internal project, it's really not efficient to accomplish something.
Thanks.
No problem. So my specific role, so I had 2 roles at Cleio. I started as a product development strategist. So basically our sales team is built in that way. So we have product development strategists and business development representative or directors, which work hand by hand to create a proposal for a specific client. So product development strategy is basically identifying what the client is wanting to accomplish. What is a product? What are the milestones? Where do we go first? Do we build a proof of concept, a prototype, or we do a proposal for the full development? So one of the big challenge in product development strategy is to find what's the end goal of the first phase of the project. And that's why I illustrate the value inflection point here. So basically you want to know where you stop the project so it creates value for the client. For example, startups, they will always want to have a prototype to show to their investor, because they need to have more money to get to the next phase to build their commercial solution. So the value, you have to identify what you need to put in that proof of concept so it has value in the eyes of the investors. So usually you try to identify the most risky items. So you try to do a feasibility study to make sure that the technology is feasible, but also you want to show a good design of your product. Second role that I had is business development. So basically identifying potential partnership, collaborations, managing the relationship with clients, not only in the sales process, but also when the project starts, goes on, and finishes. And educating the prospect and clients on medical development requirements. So business development in our area is a lot of education. A lot of startups or inventors come to us and want to develop something, but they have $10,000. So we kind of have to educate them on what it takes to bring a product to market. So it's not in the order of 10,000, it's more in the order of millions of dollars. So we have to tell them why it takes so much effort, time, and money to bring product to markets. And of course, one part of my role is to close deals manage unsatisfied clients, and all of the not so fun stuff to do. And I incorporated a couple of key considerations when talking about product development with our clients, and that's what I'm telling you about client education. So one of the quotes is this one. So it's really important to avoid jumping too quickly into the solution space. So when we guide our client, when we want to guide our client effectively, we often need to return to the problem space by confronting the ideas they have. So why do you need that? What would happen if we did it differently than the solution that you thought about? So what's the value of your approach? And sometimes it's very confronting for the client. So in sales, it's really an act of balance between challenging the client, but also respecting the time and effort they have put into developing the solution. But at the same time, we want kind of to tell them what the design, what the added value of the design before the development. For a successful innovation, you really have to account for these three facets of product development. So first, desirability. So what the market needs and wants. Viability is the financial benefit and capability of the enterprise. So is it possible to develop that product within the not only the money, but the resources that you have? And lastly, feasibility, so the technological and manufacturing ability of the endeavor. So naturally, our product development process will heavily cover the feasibility aspects, but we also have a team of strategic innovation, and they seek to pull towards desirability and feasibility to design where the market and business opportunity meet. So finding this alignment will help us balance this innovation at the center, and it's called the holistic approach to design. And that is where we'll find the most valuable design for the company, for the customer, but also for the product stakeholders. And I want to explain this very important considerations in development process. So the further you are in the development process, the more it would cost to make changes. For example, you start the development process and you have to document all the design development that you did. And if you want to change something on your product, you have to go back and start again the documentation. So it's very costly to make change. Either by negating work already done, by time delays, or the weight of retailing a developing concept. So the white line shows how naturally, as you move along the process, you answer questions, eliminate unknowns, and reduce risk as you narrow down the concept. And that's really what we try to do upstream, so in the first immerse and define phase. Effectively answering questions and reducing uncertainty as early as possible to reduce the cost of making changes. And I was talking to Pete earlier, and it's funny because I was doing this presentation and it made me realize that all of my path and experience are just perfect actually for the role I have at the moment. So my journey, which is engineering physics, medical physics, biomedical engineering, but also practicalities of the startup environments and going into business strategy, sales, etc., has really uniquely positioned me at the intersection of these disciplines, which is medical device innovation. So I've learned a lot in my short career. I still have a lot to learn, but I really like the way it has shaped how I see the medical devices development. I'm going to try to tell you a little bit more practically what I do in my day-to-day. So my day-to-day looks a lot like meetings and emails. So meeting clients, prospect, listen to their needs, evaluate fit with our team is often what we do at the beginning. So we qualify the client. Is what he wants to do. Do we think we can do it? Do it. We also meet with our engineering team to discuss technical feasibility and proposal strategy, and define a budget and timeline for what the client wants to do. We then present a product development plan and budget, which is tailored to the client's needs. And of course, we engage mode push to close deals. And then when the deal is closed, we transfer the project to operation, where a project manager will take the lead from now on and lead the project with our technical team. A lot of my work is also participating in networking events, conferences, etc. So ultimately, I hope this presentation has kind of broadened your perspective on the diverse and impactful career avenue available beyond traditional medical physics roles, and highlighting all of the foundational knowledge within the wider medical device ecosystem. And I hope that someday maybe we can collaborate if you decide to start your own company. If you want to learn more about product development, medical device strategy, etc., we have a very nice blog posts on our website, which are very well written. So I will welcome you to go on our website and read those if you want. And that's it. Any questions?
Very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, we have time for questions. I'll moderate. If you have a question on Zoom, feel free to ask it out loud or just type it in the chat in the room. Just say it out loud. I'll do it from down here. Yes, you have a question.
Sure. So you discussed, or I guess first off, thanks so much for the talk. And can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. You discussed trying to meet this balance between what a client wants, whether it's achievable within your company to do it, and whether it should be done. Have you encountered any cases where maybe a client's pitching you something, or you're trying to come up with a solution and it's outside of your scope of ability, or maybe you recognize that it's something that isn't viable or shouldn't be done, and what did that look like, and then how did you navigate it moving forward?
Yeah, it happens quite a lot, actually. Sometimes it's just not in our area of expertise. We don't have experience, something like that. Sometimes we just decided to no quote it. So we decide not to quote the project. Sometimes we have collaborators. For example, if we have almost all the expertise but need a specific expertise, we hire consultants. So we typically incorporate this into our effort and hire different collaborators for the project. And sometimes if we're not sure if it's possible or not, because it happens a lot, we're typically going to propose a phase 0. So we propose a phase where we do what I just said, strategic innovation strategy, in which we try to see, is there technical challenges that we need to de-risk very early. So we do kind of a feasibility study, but taking into consideration also the market. Sometimes we'll do some research on the users as well. If there's a lot of use risk, we'll try to minimize this risk as well. So that's what we try to bring into phase 0 to make sure that it's possible for them to develop their product.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Right. Other questions? Are the types of clients you get, are they already, are they a company that already has products and they're just trying to offload one to you that they can't handle? Or are they people who just out of nowhere have come up with an idea and are starting to get money together and now want to know how to build it?
We have both.
Yeah,
We
well,
have companies that already have products but just don't have the bandwidth to develop their new product. We also have companies that lack a specific expertise, for example, electronic design. So they don't have anyone in-house to design their PCBs, so we will do all of their PCBs or something like that. But also sometimes it's just a matter of bandwidth.
okay, so it's a mix.
But we also have inventors coming at us with nothing,
That's what someone with a cocktail napkin and a drawing on it, like, this is going to make us
Yeah.
rich.
And these are really fun to work with, but oftentimes they don't have money. So
Well, that makes me made me think of another question. Let's say a graduate student is thinking that maybe what they're working on could be commercializable, but they have no idea what to do next. Do you have advice on how they could, like, what's the path to bring it to market, and what is your opinion of the best way to do that?
well, is the scenario like they have a technology, they have like a prototype, but they want to bring it to market?
Yeah, they've done a research project that is promising, but like there's just the one thing or the one idea. How do you turn
Yeah.
a company, or how do you start making it? How do you start getting money to begin to fund it so that they could come to say,
Actually, there's a lot of grant, like governmental grant for this stage of a company, like building your first proof of concept, hiring maybe one or two engineers that will work on your proof of concept. Which is harder is after, when you want to go further into the real development with all the documentation and the standardization of your process. So I think the first step is really to prove that your idea is feasible, and then you can go to the investor and show them your value. And you really have to have a good proof of concept, good product, but also a really good pitch and business model.
okay, so you need that before.
You do, yeah. Because you need money to do anything, unfortunately.
Okay. Questions? No. I had another one. Oh, you talked about regulatory. So is it, I mean, for your clients and what you're working on, is it primarily Canadian healthcare or US? I imagine regulations are changing wherever you want to bring your product.
Yeah,
So,
it's primarily US. So we do a lot of, I think about 60% of our clients are from the US and Canada. So we are really used to working with FDA and Canada. Sometimes we have clients that want to commercialize in Europe. So we have also regulatory experts for that.
okay. And is this something that you do it simultaneous? You'd be kind of like start in one area, one geographic area, and then once it's approved, you use that to like leverage.
Yeah. You usually take the one that's the highest, that's the most strict, and then like if you follow a like ISO 13485 process, usually all of your documentation will be applicable to FDA, Health Canada, and in Europe.
Right.
But you always start with the approval of, for example, most of the people will start with FDA because this is the largest market, and then expand to Canada and Europe afterwards.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Another thing I thought of when you were describing your path and what you're doing now is it seems like you start off as a scientist engineer, but then you're doing a lot of talking to people now. I imagine your soft skills would have to be quite good to do what you're doing.
Yeah, they're better and better. It can always improve, but
So my question is for someone who is considering this type of a path themselves, how do you work on those? Because I mean, when you're in grad school, you're kind of focused on the science and the data analysis. You're not really thinking about how do I talk to people?
well, honestly, there's nothing like practicing and experience. Like I've learned that in the first role I had in sales, I was really, really uncomfortable, and I just put myself out there in really uncomfortable situations. And by practicing and doing it, you realize that it's not that bad, and like the person you're talking to is also a human. And like people can, as long as people understand what you want to say, I don't think it's that important to be like the most I don't think that soft skill is the most important skill for that role.
Okay.
But of course it's important, and you develop it by practicing. So you have to get into a role that obligates you to do that kind of work.
Okay. So I should take a part-time job as a telemarketer?
Yes, good idea.
Cool. Anything else? Anyone online have a question? Sorry, I've been ignoring the Zoom. I forgot to mention it, but Joannie is also an expert endurance marathoner. So if you have any questions about trail running, who's the person to talk with?
I can talk a lot about trail running.
So you're one of the, I mean, you are highly ranked within Quebec, are you not?
I am what? Sorry?
One of the top runners in Quebec, are you not?
Oh, I was, but I'm getting old now.
Well, we're all getting old.
Yeah, the thing that you don't lose when you get old is endurance, though. So very high, very long distances, I still do pretty well, but I'm losing my speed.
But you also have to balance that with all the work you're doing.
I also have to what?
Your time management. You have a lot of, to run further, you have to take more time in your day than you could be spending on business development.
Yeah, that's one reason why I'm less competitive than before.
Good. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I'd like to thank you once again for speaking to us, and have a great rest of your Friday.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I didn't put my email there, but maybe Pete, you can share it with the team. If ever you have questions or want to contact me for anything, feel free to. I'll be happy to just chat about anything.
Super, that'd be fantastic. All right.